Welcome to Learning English with Stories.
Sarah is a young girl. She is 7 years old. Sarah likes to ride bikes. She rides her bike every day. But Sarah's bike is old and small. One day, Sarah's parents have a surprise for her. "Close your eyes," they say. Sarah closes her eyes. "Open your eyes now," they say. Sarah opens her eyes and sees a new bike. The bike is red and shiny. It has a bell and a basket. Sarah is very happy. "Thank you, Mom and Dad," she says. Sarah takes her new bike to the park. She rings the bell. Ding, ding. She rides fast and feels the wind. She sees her friend, Ben. "Look at my new bike," she says. Ben smiles. "Wow, it's so nice," he says. "Do you want to race?" Sarah says, "Yes." They start to race. Sarah and Ben laugh and have fun. After playing, Sarah goes home. She tells her parents about the race. "I love my new bike," she says. "I had so much fun today." Her parents smile. "We are glad you like it, Sarah," they say. Every day, Sarah rides her new bike. She feels happy and free. She loves her new bike very much. Sam, who woke up one morning feeling a little grumpy. He had stayed up late playing video games the night before and didn't get enough sleep. As Sam got ready for school, he couldn't find his favorite blue sweater. He searched his room, the laundry basket, and even asked his mom if she had seen it, but it was nowhere to be found. Feeling frustrated, Sam went to school, hoping that his day would improve. However, when he got to school, he realized he had forgotten to bring his lunch with him. He had to borrow some money from his friend to buy food from the cafeteria. During recess, Sam accidentally tripped and scraped his knee. It hurt a lot, and he had to go to the nurse's office to get a bandage. He felt embarrassed as his classmates looked at him and asked what happened. After school, Sam went home feeling tired and grumpy. He didn't feel like doing his homework or playing with his toys. He just wanted to lie down and rest. As he lay on his bed, feeling sorry for himself, Sam's mom came into his room with a plate of cookies. She noticed that he looked upset and asked him what was wrong. Sam told his mom about his bad day, losing his sweater, forgetting his lunch, and hurting his knee. His mom listened sympathetically and then gave him a hug. She reminded him that everyone has bad days sometimes, but they don't last forever. Feeling a little better, Sam smiled and thanked his mom for her support. He realized that even though he had a bad day, there were still things to be grateful for and ways to make himself feel better. And with that thought in mind, Sam decided to watch his favorite movie. and enjoy the rest of his evening. He knew that tomorrow would be a new day, and he would try to make it a better one. In a bustling city, there was a young woman named Maya. Maya was usually a cheerful and optimistic person. But one day, everything seemed to go wrong. From the moment she woke up. It started when Maya accidentally spilled her breakfast cereal. Then, she missed her bus to work because it arrived early. Flustered and running late, Maya had to wait in the rain for the next one. When she finally arrived at work, her boss called her into his office to discuss a project she had been working on. Maya had put a lot of effort into it. But her boss pointed out several mistakes and asked her to redo it all. Feeling disheartened, Maya returned to her desk and tried to concentrate on her work. But her computer kept freezing, causing her to lose valuable time and progress. During lunch break, Maya went to her favorite cafe to grab a sandwich, only to find that they had run out of her favorite filling. Disappointed, she settled for something else and hurried back to the office. As the day went on, Maya's bad luck seemed to follow her. She accidentally spilled coffee on her shirt, received a parking ticket for forgetting to feed the meter, and missed an important phone call from her best friend. By the time Maya left work, she felt utterly exhausted and defeated. Nothing had gone right, and she couldn't wait to go home and forget about the day. But as Maya stepped out of the office building, she simply watching the sky. Despite the challenges she had faced, the sight of the sky reminded her that even on the darkest days, there was always a glimmer of hope and beauty to be found. With a renewed sense of optimism, Maya smiled and took a deep breath. Tomorrow would be a new day, and she was determined to make it a better one. I'm a Jenny and this is my daily routine. It's a tale with twists and turns, mundane chores, and unexpected adventures. Ready? Here we go. My day begins with the sound of the alarm. Not a gentle, melodic chime, but a blaring siren. I hit snooze, of course. It's a ritual. 15 minutes later, the alarm strikes again. This time, I muster the willpower of 1,000 warriors and drag myself out of bed. I contemplate the meaning of life while brushing my teeth, staring blankly into the mirror. It's too early for deep thoughts. So I settle on wondering if I should change my toothpaste flavor. Then it's off to the kitchen for morning coffee. I fumble with the coffee maker like it's a high-tech piece of alien machinery. Finally, the glorious smell of coffee fills the room. I sip it like it's the elixir of life, which, let's face it, it is. Now, it's time to get dressed. I open my closet and stare into the abyss of clothes, convinced I have nothing to wear. After what feels like an eternity, I settle on an outfit. It's a strategic decision, balancing comfort and style, and sometimes just whatever is clean. The commute to work is a test of patience and survival. I dodge cars, bikes, and pedestrians with the agility of a ninja. By the time I reach my office, I feel like I've won an Olympic medal. At work, the real adventure begins. Emails, meetings, more emails. And the occasional project that makes me question my career choices. I tackle them all with the grace of a swan, or at least, I try to. Lunchtime. I escape to the break room with my trusty lunchbox. Today's delicacy. A sandwich. Gourmet. No. Satisfying. Absolutely. The afternoon is a battle against the dreaded slump. My eyes droop, my energy wanes, and I consider a second coffee. I power through, driven by sheer will and the promise of 5 p.m. Finally, the workday ends. I flee the office with the enthusiasm of a kid on the last day of school. The commute home is less of a challenge, more of a victory lap. Home at last. I kick off my shoes and collapse on the couch. Dinner is a laid-back affair, sometimes a culinary experiment, sometimes takeout. Tonight, it's spaghetti with a sauce I like to call, throw everything in the pan. Evening is for leisure. I might read a book, binge-watch a series, or call a friend. It's a time to unwind, to let the day's stress melt away. As the evening draws to a close, I prepare for bed. Pajamas on, teeth brushed. And a quick scroll through social media. I set my alarm, knowing tomorrow will start the same way. Finally, I crawl into bed, grateful for the comfort and the quiet. I drift off, dreaming of tomorrow's adventures. And that, my friends, is my daily routine. Epic, isn't it? In a quaint little cafe nestled in the heart of a bustling city, there was a young waitress named Emma. Emma loved her job at the cafe, especially the part where she got to serve customers at their tables. Every morning, Emma would arrive at the cafe bright and early, ready to start her day. She would put on her crisp white apron and tie her hair back neatly. Before greeting her fellow co-workers with a warm smile. As the doors of the cafe opened, customers would start to trickle in. Their faces lighting up at the sight of the cozy interior. And the delicious aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Emma would grab her notepad and pen. And eagerly make her way around the tables. Taking orders and chatting with the customers. She loved getting to know each person's unique preferences. And hearing their stories. One busy afternoon, as Emma was rushing around the cafe, She noticed an elderly gentleman sitting alone at a corner table. His wrinkled face looked tired, and there was a hint of sadness in his eyes. Emma felt a pang of empathy as she approached the gentleman's table. She greeted him with a warm smile and asked if he needed anything. The gentleman hesitated for a moment before quietly ordering a cup of tea. As Emma returned with the tea, she couldn't help but strike up a conversation with the gentleman. She asked him about his day, and listened intently as he shared stories from his past. The more they talked, the more the gentleman's mood seemed to lighten. His tired eyes sparkled with newfound energy, and a smile spread across his face. Before long, the elderly gentleman finished his tea and bid Emma farewell with a grateful nod. As he left the cafe, Emma couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction knowing that she had made a difference in his day. From that moment on, Emma realized that being a waitress wasn't just about serving food and drinks. It was about serving kindness and compassion to those who needed it most. And so, with renewed determination, Emma continued to serve tables at the cafe, spreading warmth and joy wherever she went. And as she watched her customers leave with smiles on their faces, she knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Lily. Lily had a fluffy white puppy named Snowball. One sunny day, Lily and Snowball went for a walk in the park. Suddenly, Snowball ran off chasing a butterfly. Lily searched everywhere but couldn't find Snowball. Feeling worried, Lily asked people in the park if they had seen her puppy. Finally, a kind old man said he saw Snowball heading towards the pond. Lily hurried to the pond and found Snowball happily playing with other dogs. Relieved, Lily hugged Snowball tightly and promised never to let him out of her sight again. Sarah sat on her porch swing, enjoying the warm afternoon breeze and the sound of birds chirping in the distance. She sipped her tea and flipped through a magazine, feeling relaxed and content. Suddenly, she heard a soft meowing coming from the bushes near her house. Curious, Sarah set down her tea and followed the sound. As she approached the bushes, she spotted a small, fluffy kitten peeking out from behind the leaves. Its big green eyes stared up at her, pleading for help. "Oh, you poor thing," Sarah cooed, kneeling down beside the kitten. The kitten meowed again, as if in response to Sarah's question. It looked dirty and disheveled, like it had been wandering around for days. Without hesitation, Sarah scooped up the kitten and cradled it in her arms. "You must be hungry," she said, stroking its fur gently. "Let's get you something to eat." She carried the kitten inside and rummaged through her pantry. Finding a can of tuna fish, she opened it and placed a small portion on a plate, which she set on the floor for the kitten to eat. The kitten eagerly devoured the food, its tail wagging with delight. Sarah smiled, feeling a warm sense of satisfaction at being able to help. After the kitten had finished eating, Sarah decided to take it to the vet to make sure it was healthy. She carefully placed it in a cardboard box and drove to the nearest animal clinic. The vet examined the kitten and confirmed that it was in good health, aside from being a little malnourished. Sarah breathed a sigh of relief and asked if there was anything else she needed to do. The vet explained that the kitten didn't have a microchip or any identification, so Sarah would need to decide what to do next. She could keep the kitten herself or try to find its owner by posting flyers around the neighborhood. Sarah thought for a moment, then made up her mind. She had grown attached to the kitten already and couldn't bear to part with it. "I think I'll keep him," she said with a smile. And so, Sarah's quiet afternoon on the porch had turned into an unexpected adventure with a furry new friend. From that day on, the kitten, whom Sarah named Whiskers, became a beloved member of her family, bringing joy and companionship into her life every day. Sophie is a young woman who lives in a quiet village. She enjoys spending her weekends in her garden, growing flowers and vegetables. One sunny Saturday, Sophie is planting new seeds when she notices her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Wilson, struggling to carry a heavy bag of soil. Sophie hurries over to help. "Let me carry that for you, Mrs. Wilson," she says with a smile. Mrs. Wilson sighs with relief. "Thank you, Sophie. My back isn't as strong as it used to be." Sophie carries the bag to Mrs. Wilson's garden and sets it down gently. "Do you need help with anything else?" she asks. Mrs. Wilson nods. "Actually, I could use some help planting these flowers. My arthritis makes it hard to dig." Sophie agrees to help and spends the next hour working in Mrs. Wilson's garden. They plant roses, tulips, and daisies. While they work, they chat about their lives. Sophie learns that Mrs. Wilson used to be a teacher and loves to read mystery novels. After they finish planting, Mrs. Wilson invites Sophie inside for a cup of tea. They sit in the cozy kitchen, sipping tea and eating homemade cookies. Mrs. Wilson shows Sophie a photo album filled with pictures of her family and her travels around the world. "You've been to so many places," Sophie exclaims. "I'd love to hear more about your adventures." Mrs. Wilson smiles warmly. "I'd be happy to share my stories with you." From that day on, Sophie visits Mrs. Wilson every weekend. They work in the garden together. And Mrs. Wilson tells Sophie fascinating stories about her travels. Sophie helps Mrs. Wilson with chores and errands. And in return, Mrs. Wilson teaches Sophie about gardening and shares her favorite mystery novels. One day, Mrs. Wilson gives Sophie a special gift. A beautiful old book with a handwritten note inside. "This is my favorite mystery novel," Mrs. Wilson says. "I want you to have it. Thank you for being such a wonderful friend." Sophie is touched. "Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. I will treasure this forever." Sophie and Mrs. Wilson continue to enjoy each other's company. And their friendship grows stronger with each passing week. The garden becomes a place of beauty and joy, filled with flowers, laughter, and stories. Through their time together, Sophie learns that the best surprises in life often come from the people we least expect. I got up this morning with all the grace of a sloth on a Monday. It was one of those days where my bed seemed to have morphed into a warm, cozy cocoon, and leaving its comforting embrace was akin to breaking up with a cloud. Nevertheless, the alarm clock was relentless in its mission to disrupt my peaceful slumber, blaring obnoxiously like a possessed rooster. With one eye open and the other still firmly glued shut by sleep, I clumsily groped for the source of the infernal noise. After a few failed attempts, I finally managed to silence the beast, and sat up, rubbing the sleep from my eyes like I was trying to scrub away yesterday's bad decisions. Dragging myself out of bed felt like trying to convince a cat to take a bath. Tedious, pointless, and met with a lot of resistance. But duty called, or rather, bills needed paying. So I begrudgingly stumbled towards the bathroom, navigating the obstacle course of discarded socks and misplaced furniture that littered my path. As I stared blearily at my reflection in the mirror, I couldn't help but wonder if I'd somehow aged overnight. My hair had apparently decided to throw its own party while I slept, resembling a bird's nest after a particularly rowdy gathering. Eventually, after a series of yawns that could have rivaled a lion's roar, I managed to piece together some semblance of an outfit that didn't scream. I just rolled out of bed too loudly, armed with a lukewarm cup of coffee and a half-hearted pep talk from my reflection. I ventured out into the world, ready to face whatever challenges the day had in store. And thus began another chapter in the chronicles of my epic battle against the forces of morning grogginess. With any luck, I'd make it through unscathed, armed only with caffeine and a questionable sense of optimism. But if nothing else, at least I could take solace in the fact that tomorrow was another day, one that hopefully came with a better snooze button. Darlene was a creature of habit, and her habits were strong. Each morning, she would reach for the same familiar jar of instant coffee. A ritual so ingrained that she could prepare it with her eyes closed. Her friends often teased her, calling her Darlene the die-hard instant coffee drinker. But she didn't mind. For Darlene, the simplicity and reliability of instant coffee were all she needed. One sunny Saturday, however, her best friend Carla decided it was time for Darlene to experience the broader world of coffee. Carla, a self-proclaimed coffee connoisseur, dragged Darlene to the newest, trendiest coffee shop in town, Brewtopia. Darlene eyed the place nervously as they walked in. The air thick with the rich aroma of freshly ground beans. The menu was an intimidating blackboard of cryptic terms and unpronounceable words. Darlene squinted at the offerings: macchiato, cortado, ristretto, and even something called a flat white. "Don't worry, Darlene," Carla whispered encouragingly. "I'll help you out. Just take a deep breath." Darlene nodded, though she wasn't entirely sure a deep breath would help. When they reached the front of the line, Carla stepped up confidently and ordered a double-shot macchiato with an extra pump of caramel, oat milk, and a dusting of cinnamon. Darlene's turn came. She glanced at the barista, a young man with a hipster beard and a knowing smile, and then back at the bewildering menu. "I'll have a cappuccino," she said, hoping she pronounced it correctly. "Sure thing," the barista replied, tapping her order into the register. Darlene exhaled, relieved to have made it through her first order. They found a cozy spot by the window and waited for their drinks. When her cappuccino arrived, Darlene inspected it cautiously. It was a far cry from her instant coffee. Frothy, artfully presented, and smelling divine. She took a tentative sip, and her eyes widened in surprise. The rich, creamy taste was unlike anything she had ever experienced. "Wow," she said, almost to herself. "This is really good." Carla grinned. "See? I knew you'd like it." As the days passed, Darlene found herself thinking more and more about that cappuccino. She began visiting different coffee shops, each time trying something new and learning the lingo. Soon, she could distinguish between a latte and a flat white, and even knew the difference between a dark roast and a medium roast. One morning, as she prepared to make her usual instant coffee, she paused and smiled, reaching instead for her new French press. She brewed a fresh cup of single-origin coffee she had picked up from a local roaster. The rich aroma filled her kitchen, and as she took her first sip, she realized she had truly stepped out of her comfort zone. Darlene the die-hard instant coffee drinker had become Darlene the coffee explorer. And she had to admit, it was a pretty delicious transformation.
Enjoy new videos every day by subscribing to my channel.